Hello. We are Reddit Reads, and welcome to the channel. In today's subreddit of Entitled Parents, we're going to be taking a look at 3 really great stories. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy. This first story was posted by Not a JoJo, so a big shout out to them. With the title of, EP Tries to Hit My Pregnant Mom, Loses Custody of His Only Child. Let's get straight into the story. Some context: I was 11 when this happened and my mom was about 8ish months pregnant with my little brother. Her live-in boyfriend was a massive waste of DNA and usually took his frustration out on me, but he thought I was at Mima's, my grandmother, because my mom's dietary changes while being pregnant were causing me health problems. I was over helping her with housework and had been playing games for about an hour at the time of the incident. So a-hole had gotten home at about 8 or 9 p.m. and he was already in a bad mood for some reason. My mom was going to see what was going on and asked him to stop shouting because last time the neighbors came over due to the noise volume and she didn't want to have to explain that one again. Honestly, I didn't blame her. She's pregnant, her feet hurt, and she was in the hospital for kidney stones like 3 days before this happened, so she's tired and frustrated. Apparently, a-hole decided he felt the need to be mad at her and started shouting obscenities at my mother, which led to me grabbing the baseball bat I kept under my bed and sneaking closer to hear. Well, right as I got within range I saw his hand fly up and I had seen the gesture before. He was aiming to hit my pregnant mother, so my first reaction was to swing that bat into his leg as hard as I could, and when he went down I hit him maybe 3 or 4 more times at full force, mind you, and even though I was a child I was certainly not weak and knew to aim for his knees and wrist. Apparently, I nailed his left wrist at one point. My mother called Mima and 911, which resulted in a cop car and an ambulance. The cops asked what happened as they loaded the man into the ambulance and he tried to say I assaulted him unprompted. This was when Mima came to the rescue and interjected that 1, I have never hit someone without being hit first, and 2, a-hole and my mom were constantly fighting. She then said they could ask the neighbors, who verified the statement. When the cops then asked why I hit him so hard it broke at least one knee for sure, I stated he could hit me and I'd probably hide since he's bigger than me, but he was going to hit my mom and she has a baby nearly here. I didn't want the baby to get hurt, so I hurt him first and made sure he wouldn't do it again. My mom agreed to press charges for assault, child endangerment, and child abuse. The cops were also informed of how he verbally, mentally, and emotionally abused me, and Mima had at least one voice recording of this happening in the past. Now, I didn't go to the court cases because I was a child and everyone agreed to not bring in the children if it was avoidable, which it was since Mima had physical proof of his abuse. But later I found out he was only allowed weekend visitation at my mom's convenience and had to pay child support. A few years afterwards he got himself arrested for some reason and had his visitation rights revoked by the court. So yeah, don't attack my mom and don't fuck with my little brother. My family will ruin you. Nothing was more gratifying than knowing this man can no longer see his only child because he thought he could get away with being an abusive dick. This next story was posted by SolarFlare1222, so a big shout out to them. With the title of, M Nearly Kills Her Children and Blames Us for It. Let's get straight into the story. We used to live near a school zone, and the 15 miles per hour speed limit ended about 1/4 of a mile away from our neighborhood. My mom, my sister, and I were about to pull out of our neighborhood and turn left. We stop at the stop sign, check that no cars are coming, and start to turn when out of nowhere, a car that was going at least 65 to 70 miles per hour zooms down the road. We didn't see it coming, but I warned my mom in time to stop. That car hits us, spins out of control, crashes into a stop sign and demolished the wall of one of our neighbors. Thankfully, we only busted our headlight and some minor front of the car damages. Everyone in our car was fine. We rush over to the other car and sitting in the driver's seat was the mom, M, and a child that was in the passengers while in a child Seat. In the USA, children that require a child seat have to sit in the back, and this child, in particular, was no more than 5 years old. In the back, there were 2 other children, between 7 and 10, without a seatbelt, and one of them was unconscious. I deal with a lot of first aid and CPR in my line of work, so I rush to help the kids. The mom struggles to get out of the car. I ignore her, seeing the children are more important, and as I am trying to get the door open, I hear screaming.
Come help me.
I'm sorry. Are you in pain? Can you move too?
Yeah, but this was several years ago, so my memory is a little hazy. I can't get out. You should help me first.
Thankfully, there is still air circulating in the car, so I go over to help her. I pull her out, and she storms over to my mom, who was on the phone with the cops. Keep in mind, her children were trapped in the car. I get the kids out and set them on the curb, and I start to check on the unconscious one. The kid was still knocked out, so dragging her out was a bit more difficult, and I had to grab her legs and her waist to properly carry her. Keep in mind, nothing about this was sexual. It was literally the best and safest way to pull her out of the totaled car. I check her breathing. Thankfully she was alright, and my best guess was a concussion. I've been ignoring Em and my mom, so I didn't hear their conversation, but my mom filled me in.
What the F is wrong with you?
1 second, officer. Excuse me, but I'm on the phone with the cops. Would you like to talk with them?
Snatching the phone from my mother's hand. Hello? This crazy lady pulled out at a crazy high speed as I was driving down and my car is totaled. She is a maniac and should be arrested. She nearly killed my children.
She smirks at my mom. Now, on the road, there are skid marks leading to where the totaled car is. There are no skid marks leading to our car. That's pretty obvious to who was speeding and who was obeying the law. She sees me holding her daughter and touching her waist as I pull her out of the car.
Put my daughter down, you pervert. I was confused. I was literally trying to save her kid's life.
I walked to the sidewalk and used my jacket as a sort of padding between her daughter and the ground. I check vitals, make sure that she would be alright. By this time the cops show up, and the M is shrieking to them that I was taking advantage of her daughter and that my mom was intentionally trying to hurt her kids. We've never met M before. My sister has gone back to her house and got some water bottles, being thoughtful enough to get an entire cooler filled. The cops were thankful, as were the kids, who were pretty nice and calm throughout the whole ordeal. I showed the cops my ID and explained my job position. They got an ambulance who confirmed that what I did was the right thing to do and the way I got the daughter out of the car was the best way possible. We think that everything is going to be calm, but oh no. Cop, ma'am, it's very obvious that you were the one who was speeding. I think it's more than fair if you don't get the lawyers involved and you each pay the respective damages.
No way. She clearly wanted to kill my kids. She is a reckless driver and should be punished.
Another cop, who was taking my statement, said,
This woman had one of her children in the front seat and neither kid in the back was wearing a seatbelt.
We also had a digital speed camera up on the road, and a third cop went to go check it. M not only went 75 miles per hour on a 35 miles per hour zone, but she started her speeding at the school zone while the school was letting out, meaning kids were everywhere. She was promptly arrested, and the kid's dad was called, who profusely apologized, and they went to the hospital that the daughter was taken to. This next story was posted by Nickleaf, so a big shout out to them. With the title of, Entitled Anti-Vaxxers Cause Over Half My Class to Catch the Chickenpox, expect a thank you. Let's get straight into the story. This happened back when I was in kindergarten, so some details are a bit fuzzy, but the story is very much real. When I was in kindergarten, entitled boy came to class one day with chickenpox. This wasn't a mild case either. The spots were angry and red, and within a few hours, a couple of our classmates were itching. My teacher had immediately called his parents, but they refused to pick him up, saying that it would be good for the other children to be around him and asking her to just leave him in the classroom. Now, only about half my class had gotten their chickenpox shots at that point. My parents were really good about getting my brothers and me our shots when we were supposed to get them. But as this was early in the school year, a lot of the parents hadn't gotten their kids vaccinated for chickenpox yet. To enroll in kindergarten at my elementary school, you have to either vaccinate your kids before the school year starts, or within 3 months after. My teacher didn't know what to do. The officer told her that if the parents wanted the kid to remain in class, she was technically supposed to let him unless other parents complained or the principal deemed him a danger to the other students. The principal was over at the high school on the other side of the city. He was principal of both. Weird Christian school thing. He would rush over when he could, but because of the school handbook, the EB had to remain in class. My teacher asked the school secretary to call our parents, but she only had a home number for most parents and ended up with a lot of answering machines. So in kindergarten, everyone sat at table groups, and I was at EB's table. He was carrying on like normal, yelling about Power Rangers. I was also the only kid at our little table who had been vaccinated. I remember feeling bad because one of the girls was scheduled to get her shot the next day. Talk about bad luck. A lot of the kids at my table started itching, and the girl who was supposed to get her shot the next day showed me her arm, and she had very faint pink dots. I don't know if chickenpox usually moves that quickly, or if EB just had a super mutant strand, but I was freaked out. I knew I had gotten a shot that my mom promised would protect me from getting sick, but I was also 5 and still thought Stitch from Lilo and Stitch was a real being who lived in Hawaii. I was convinced that touching EB would mean I would die from chickenpox. So my friends and I all avoided him like he had, well, the plague. Finally, the principal bursts into the room and kneels down in front of EB. He asks EB to please come with him so they can call his parents together. About 20 minutes later, the entitled parents show up. Shit hits the fan. Entitled mom starts screaming about how both she and her husband are licensed chiropractors and know all about the evils of vaccines and how vaccines give people autism. My oldest brother has Asperger's. If this had happened like 5 years later, I could have roasted the hell out of these anti-vaxxers for their stupidity. Entitled dad tries to calm them down, but also quietly tells my principal that as licensed chiropractors, they know and have seen how vaccines not only give children autism but also make them gay. As a lesbian, I could have roasted the shit out of them had this taken place years later. My principal firmly tells them that EB needs to go home and can only come back when he is no longer sick. EP try to fight back, but my principal is firm, and EB is dragged away from my class begging his parents for a new Power Rangers toy. As the week went on, more and more of my classmates dropped like flies, until only about 7 of us remained. We were the lucky 7 who had been vaccinated prior to the start of the school year, and since most of the class was homesick, we got to play a ton of games and pick out the books we wanted to read. Usually the class voted, and we 7 were often among the outvoted group. After a few days, my classmates began to return, not a red spot in sight. But it was a few weeks later that the real kicker happened. The entitled parents sent out emails to all the parents of kids in my class, painting themselves as the victims and heroes for exposing the class to life's natural vaccine. My dad got mad, because even though I didn't get sick, thanks parents who were on top of my vaccinations, you all rock, a lot of my classmates did. The entitled parents asked for a thank you from the other parents, and needless to say, they got no thank yous and only a lot of passive-aggressive remarks and glares in the hallway. Also, don't feel too bad for EB, he turned out to be one of the biggest entitled douchebags I've ever met. I went to school with him all the way up through high school and he's one of the worst humans I've had the displeasure of dealing with. The entitled apple doesn't fall far from the entitled tree. Hello. Reddit reads here again. We hoped you enjoyed today's episode of Entitled Parents. If you did, smash the like button, and remember to subscribe, for guaranteed, daily, Reddit content.